Hey everyone, Mr. MC here. This is a guide for round 5 of the Nations Cup Exhibition Season 2. And before I start the guide, I do need to note that for those in EMEA and Oceania, which you'll see in a bit, there has been a schedule change that will start to come into effect at the very start of the next round, which is round 5. And this will apply for both the manufacturer and the Nations Cup. And finally, Nations Cup races are now on Wednesday. So going on over to the lap guide, you want to look for this light that is on the left, as that is your first braking point. You want to brake hard for a short while, carefully ease off of the brakes, and do a lot of throttle control as you go through this chicane. Try to bring yourself to the middle and start to ease off of throttle as you turn right. Look for this orange barrier, as that is your cue to start to accelerate a little bit more. Don't be too aggressive on the throttle, as you do risk understeering onto the off-track area. Then brake just before you go under the bridge. Just bring yourself all the way to the right side of the track if possible. Nice and easy on the throttle. Stick to the right side of the track. Then look for this wall that is on the left, as you want to brake before it ends. And you want to brake a little early for this turn, so you can get the car rotated around this turn, have it pointing where you want to go, and get on the throttle as early as possible. Then brake just before the curbs on the right start. Just nice and easy off of the brakes, nice and easy on the throttle. Then brake when the curb on the left ends. Just do little bits of braking, nice and patient on the throttle so you don't understeer onto the gravel. Then look for this digital flag that is on the right, as that is going to be your braking point. Brake before you pass it, and you want to brake hard for a short while. Go down to first gear for additional rotation, but when you want to start to accelerate, go up to second gear and be nice and patient with the throttle once again. A little bit of braking as you go through this right turn. Look for this little curb that is sticking out, as that is your apex, so you want to start to slowly accelerate a bit more. You will need to brake early for this turn, so I start to brake right around here. So brake nice and early, brake hard for a short moment, slowly ease off of the brakes. Try to bring yourself to the right side of the track if possible, nice and careful on the throttle, and brake even more before you go under this Gran Turismo Sports sign. You want to try to go over these curbs, as that will help you shave time off your lap time. Nice and careful with your throttle control. Get the car pointing where you want to go, get on the throttle as soon as you can, and if possible, take this final turn flat out. But that is all for the lap guide. Let's go ahead and take a look at the strategies. So for this qualifying session, you're only going to have 5 minutes to try to get a good qualifying time. And because your lap times are going to be a little bit on the longer side, you're not going to have enough time to do the jump out and jump back in strategy, which means that you're going to do 2 qualifying laps. So you only have 2 chances to try to get the best time possible, so you better make them count. Or should I say, you really only have 1 chance because the tire wear is pretty high here. So on your outlap, you want to drive as carefully as possible and try to get under someone's slipstream before the start of your first qualifying lap. And I say this because at the main straight, that is where the slipstream is going to come in very useful, and you'll be able to shave off a bit of time that way. It'll also come in pretty useful at the second straight, although it won't be as much as the main straight. And as you finish your outlap, just try to be nice and careful as you go through this chicane. You want to set yourself up just nice enough so that you're able to stay in the slipstream if you choose to go after it, and to make sure that you get a good clean exit to get a good start to your first qualifying lap. And right here, this is where the slipstream will come in really useful, so I'm just putting that out there. And as you're going through your second qualifying lap, you're going to notice that you have quite a bit of tire wear, and that's going to hurt your qualifying lap. So yeah, you want to make sure that lap 2, which is your first qualifying lap, is going to be the best lap that you can put in. So once again, you have 2 chances to try to get a good time. Just try to make sure that your first qualifying lap is your absolute best one. So going on over to the start of the race, don't forget that this is a grid start, so make sure you bring your traction control to 1. and shortly after the race starts, you can then bring it back down to 0 or whatever value you normally have it set to. So for this race, we are doing 13 laps at Catalunya GP, and we are doing this with Group 3 cars. You can choose any Group 3 car that you want, and we are given the racing soft and medium tires, with the racing medium tires being the only required tires. So make sure you equip the racing medium tires at some point in the race so you don't get the 1 minute penalty that gets applied after the race ends. Fuel is a ×3, which means that most cars will not have an issue with fuel. There are a couple that will have an issue with it, like the Lancer. So if you're in a car like the Lancer, you'll need to do a little bit of fuel saving. Luckily, all you have to do is just do a little bit of short shifting for a couple laps and you should be fine. But for most of the other cars in the Group 3 category, fuel will not be an issue. However, tires are going to be a pretty big issue here. Tire wear is a ×7, which means that your racing soft tires will last about 5 laps. And if you think about trying out the one stop, you're going to find yourself having a very bad time, because you'll probably end up doing something like 5 soft, 8 medium, and you're going to find out that at the end of your medium stint, you can barely control the car. Ask me how I know about that. But anyways, so this race is pretty much going to be a 2-stop race. The 2-stop is going to be the much safer and the faster option. So what you want to do is go 5 laps on the soft tires, another 5 laps on the soft tires, which leaves 3 laps on the racing medium tires. If you are somehow a master tier at tire saving, it is possible to do 6 laps, but I personally would not suggest going that far, as your time drop off is going to be pretty massive. So in this case, I'm trying to do 6 laps on the racing soft tires, and I'm pretty much regretting it because I'm going a lot slower. So if you're on the racing soft tires, only go for 5 laps. And I do want to show where the pit stop is. It is right after the final chicane. You have to make a sharp right, and you can bring yourself into the pit stop. And your pit loss time is going to be around 7.5 seconds, and this is considering that you're only going in for a tire change. And you just want to be careful as you go out of the pit stop, because you are exiting towards the end of the main straight, so there are going to be cars that could be passing by going really fast, so you don't want to end up getting in their way. And as you go onto the racing medium tires, you're lapping around 1 second per lap slower versus those on the racing soft tires, so you're going to be at a bit of a disadvantage. So you have that, and then with the high tire wear, that's going to make a long stint on the racing medium tires even more problematic, which is further going to make the one stop less viable. So you want to try to go for a 2-stop. Once again, just do 5 soft, 5 soft, and 3 medium. And if you are starting in the middle or in the back of the pack, you can switch up the order, so you start on the racing medium tires, get the worst tire compound out of the way. That way you'll end up doing 3 medium, and then 5 soft, and then another 5 soft. And before I forget, when it comes to this chicane, you do want to try to make sure that you're able to completely go over the curbs, because if you take that chicane wrong and you hit the curbs just bad enough, that could cause a car to spin out. So either try to completely go over it all 13 laps, or go around it all 13 laps. Pick one and stick with it. So going over to the cars that I tried out. I tried out a couple cars since I'm a little short on time, but one of the cars that I really do like, and that is actually one of the top cars for this combination, is the 2017 Lexus RC F. Keyword 2017, do not choose a 2016 Lexus. So with the 2017 Lexus, the pace here is really good. The qualifying pace is also really good. The first couple of laps are pretty good. The only problem with this car is that it's pretty hard on the tires. So once the tires start to wear out, that is when you want to start to be a little more careful about how you're accelerating the car out of the turns, because if you get too aggressive, the car is going to try to kill you. And luckily, fuel is not an issue with this car, so you don't have to worry about the fuel. But overall, this car has been treating me really good. I feel pretty comfortable driving around this track with this car. So personally for me, the 2017 RC F is going to be my go-to car. And before I go on over to the next car, I do want to quickly show how it is at launch. So at the starting sequence, this car has an alright launch. It's nothing special in my opinion. It gets the job done, and yeah, it's nothing too special. And you'll actually see the WRX behind me get a pretty good launch, which is pretty interesting since, if I remember correctly, that is a turbo car, and those cars with the turbo do have a bit of an issue when it comes to launching the car out of a starting position, which I'll mention in, well, actually let's talk about it now. So there is a potential problem with turbo cars. So for those cars with a turbo, there is a chance that the car can get a really bad launch. It just forgets to accelerate, and that is going to put it at a big disadvantage against those cars around it. So if you're in a turbo car, you want to hopefully make sure that that doesn't happen, that your car doesn't end up stalling or something like that and gets itself swallowed up by the pack. In this case, I got a better launch, so I didn't have to struggle with trying to catch up to the AI car that was ahead of me in the last clip. And before I talk a bit more about the Lancer Evo, if you go onto the free practice, then go to car selection, you can filter the car selection by aspiration type, and here you'll be able to see which cars are naturally aspirated, like the 2017 Lexus, which cars have the turbo, like the Peugeot VGT, the Subaru WRX, and the Lancer Evo, or which cars have a supercharger, like the Jaguar F-Type and the Ford GT. So going back over to the Lancer Evo, so this car for me was alright. I didn't really have the best time with it, but for those who are really good with the Lancer Evo, this is another potential car that you can use instead of the 2017 Lexus. This car actually does have to do a little bit of fuel saving, so you want to do a little bit of short shifting. I found that shifting at around 90% of the bar in the bottom of the screen being full for a couple of laps should do the trick, and that way you don't have to refuel. The tires last the same amount of laps as the 2017 Lexus, so do 5 soft, 5 soft, 3 medium. And unlike the 2017 Lexus, the Lancer Evo doesn't try to kill you as much. It does get a little bit understeery at times, but other than that, the car doesn't get so dramatic when the tires start to wear out. So this car, the Lancer Evo, is another potential option, especially for those who know how to use this car much better than I do. But yeah, I just wanted to give this car a try and see how it performed, and in my opinion, it performed alright. But once again, just keep in mind that you do have to do a little bit of fuel saving and try not to get the bogged down launch that it could potentially get since it's a turbo. And finally, we'll talk about the Porsche 911 RSR. This car also has a launch problem, but not because of a turbo, since it doesn't have one. Rather, the problem is that it has a really long first gear, so it takes a bit of time for the car to rev itself up. So for those who do not like front-engine rear-wheel drive cars, and for those who want to look for a car that is a little easier to drive and that can rotate around turns pretty nicely, take a look at the Porsche 911 RSR, as this car does a really good job when it comes to turns. This car will do a lot of rotation for you, and it's also a pretty forgiving car to drive. Luckily, this car does not have to do any sort of fuel saving. You just want to try to go as fast as you can, try to push the car as much as you can. The 911 RSR also has its soft tires last as long as those of the Lexus and the Lancer Evo, so once again, go 5 soft, 3 medium. And just like the Lancer Evo, this car will not try to kill you when the tires start to wear out. This car doesn't act all dramatic and stuff like that unless if you really force it to. Instead, this car will just start to drive a lot slower, so once your car is suddenly starting to forget how to go fast, you'll kind of know why. And that is because, once again, the tires are starting to wear out. And in my experience, a lot of the tire wear results in the car being pretty understeery. And before I end this guide, I just want to mention that even though the 911 RSR is not the fastest car, and you'll notice that on the straights, it's not too good on the top end speed, this car will make it up by being able to gracefully go around the turns in this track, and this car will be pretty stable, and it's a pretty friendly car to drive. So if you're looking for a bit more stability, take a look at the Porsche 911 RSR. But this guide's been going on for a while, so I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Once again, this is a 2-stop race. Make sure you have the racing medium tires on at some point in the race to not get the penalty after the race ends. But that is pretty much it from me. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. So this is Mr. MCA, wishing you a good race, and I'll see you in the next video.